How's it going, everyone? Bryce Newberger here, and welcome to week 8 of Abuse and Addiction. We begun the hard work last week, and so there might be a lot of, hopefully, encouragement, not too much discouragement amongst the group. You guys got out there, you eliminated waste and filth, you began the process of establishing accountability groups, you've got some real movement in your life, and so you're like, yeah, we did it, like we're doing this thing. That is awesome, that is exciting, that is what I love to hear. This week, we're going to talk about the process of understanding the process of change and what you're really, getting into. Now, what we want to do is we want to call out discouragement, because the truth is you just got really good momentum, this last week, and hopefully that was really good momentum. You're on a very long journey of a process of change, and it's going to take time. And so this week we're going to take time to acknowledge some of the discouragement and lies, and as we begin our 40-year journey to the promised land, we don't want to be looking back to Egypt and going back to where we came from. So we're going to look at some encouragement on the process of change and why we should not go back to where we came, even when it seems hard. So the first thing I want to talk about is survival strategies enslave us. Remember that. We're gonna have a real Exodus kind of theme through this, but survival strategies often result in behaviors that enslave us. So whatever you're turning to, that again, it's that idea that we talked about a few weeks ago, that Jesus is the living water and the bread of life. He sustains us, and so we will have these needs, these felt needs, and we'll seek to feed those needs, to quench those thirsts with survival strategies, and those will result in a lot of times burial behaviors that we've talked about, and that will lead us towards being enslaved. So what are some deep, unmet emotional and spiritual hungers? Really, honestly, don't take the easy way out on this. What are some deep, unmet emotional and spiritual hungers? Is it intimacy? Is it feeling of belongingness? Is it just really a deep desire to hear the voice of the Lord? What is a deep, unmet emotional and spiritual hunger that you have in your life? What are some coping and survival strategies that seem to feed those hungers? What are some coping and survival strategies that seem to feed those hungers, but ultimately they lead to life-threatening, enslaving old behaviors? What are some things you keep falling into that you think, I just need to meet this need, and if I do this thing, I'll get it out of my system. It could be a host of different behaviors and needs, and so it's really going to be dependent upon each person to answer this question. But take some time and talk amongst yourselves again about some deep, unmet emotional and spiritual hungers. And if you are not going to be deep here, if you're gonna try and just float above the surface and not do the work of healing, you're not going to get much out of this question. So really, really take some self-inventory. We all have some deeply unmet emotional and spiritual hungers because we're flawed, broken humanity, and we live in a flawed, broken world. Take some time to talk. I will wait. All right, next we're going to talk about new awareness. So what are some ways we can be more open to new awareness that God brings our way? So the idea is that as you're beginning this journey, God's going to be faithful to start opening your eyes to certain things that maybe you thought were innocent, maybe you were downplaying. God's going to open up new avenues to you. And so God will bring new awareness to your life of ways that you can grow and thrive and live, more waste and filth to eliminate, maybe some beneficial things or acts of service to add in. What are ways that we can be more aware of those opportunities? What are some things that we can do to prepare ourselves? Talk about that as a group, but also keep in mind another warning: do not fall into the trap of religious addiction. Do not fall into the trap of vain spiritual works that really aren't heartfelt. So you want to make sure that you're, what you're doing to be aware of the new awareness. That is actually, you're putting forth ideas to just fact check with the group, just kind of check it together and make sure that it's not like, oh, memorize 25 Bible verses, what can you actually do to bring awareness that God, awareness to the new awareness that God will give you, to basically be more receptive to the Spirit as it moves. Take some time to talk about that, and I will wait for you guys. Okay, next we're going to talk about how fear is the greatest enemy of a meaningful life change. When you begin the work of changing your life, of stepping onto this, there are going to be some fears that you have of facing that change because a lot of people are resistant to change. You've grown comfortable. What if, as we talked about the previous week, some of eliminating filth and waste is a new job, perhaps even a new career? What if you're in a bad line of work? I don't know. And so the pension and paycheck and family and insurance and all that, right? What are the fears? And so fears of facing change. What are some thoughts that might comfort us about staying where we are? Sometimes, staying where you're at, you can start to get these little whispers of, hey, it would be better if you just stayed here. It's fantastic out here. Why don't you just stay where you're at? And ultimately, those comforts are going to enslave you. Those are enslavement whispers coming to trap you. And so, take some time to discuss as a group what are some what you feel are valid fears. What are some comforts of staying where you're at, and then circle back. How are those comforts enslaving you? What's the trap of those comforts? Call them out as a group. Take some time to talk about that. I think it's going to be a great discussion. All right, and next we're going to hit our next topic, which is the ability to face sadness and pain is vital to the healing journey. This is such an important thing to basically gear up to face sadness and pain. We are averse to pain in our lives. We are conditioned to, if you burn your hand on a stove, not to touch that stove when it's hot ever again. We are just conditioned in response. That's what we do. And so part of healing is going to be inviting sadness and pain into your life, because you're going to be opening up some old wounds. You're going to be going into some new, kind of taking courage to step in some new directions, going back to eliminating waste and filth, reaching out for accountability, opening yourself up to essentially get your hand slapped for some bad behaviors. And so you want to have the ability to face sadness and pain, because that's so vital to healing. So what are some sorrows that we bottle up? What are some sorrows we bottle up that maybe we don't want to confront? Because those sorrows can also hide some of the past abuses we've suffered. They can show us the masks that we wear. They can show us some of the habits and practices that our families established that were bad or are currently taking place in our family. So what are some sorrows that we bottle up? Why do we need to face this pain instead of just trying to move on without confronting sadness? I've definitely seen this in my life. Someone has hurt me, and I think I would just rather move on than confront that hurt. I think that would make me feel better. The hard part is, and it's definitely been the case, when those people are core relationships in your life. It'd be better just not to deal with that. Let's not poke the bear. That's water under the bridge. Let's move on. But it's important to gird yourself to face that sadness that's going to come with that, and the pain that's going to come with that. And so why do we need to face this pain instead of just trying to move on without confronting sadness? Take some time to talk amongst yourselves, and I will wait for that. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to talk about one day at a time. I keep saying this, one day at a time, one day at a time, one day at a time. Today we're going to talk about the important concept of one day at a time. When Jesus says the prayer, he says, pray this way. He says, give us our day this daily bread. Daily bread. Let's talk about the concept of daily bread. God gave the Israelites, when they were traveling through the wilderness, manna from heaven, and they could not save that manna. If they did, it would go bad on them. So they only had enough bread for the day. There's a concept in that to healing. They were leaving enslavement, going towards the promised land, and that's what we're all doing, is we're all leaving the enslavement of abuse and addiction and traveling towards the promised land. And so it's important that God give us enough. So there's an important thing where God gives us enough bread for one day, but not enough bread for tomorrow. Why would God do that? Why would God give us enough bread for one day and not enough for tomorrow? Take some time to talk about that, and then we'll push this one a little bit further on the next question. So discuss that real quick. All right, so hopefully you guys have talked about that. And so the idea behind that question is that God shows us He is our source of change and healing. If we look too far ahead in the process of healing and instead of taking it one day at a time, if we save up for ourselves, we try to save up for ourselves more than daily bread, we begin to trust the process more than we trust God. We trust the objects of healing more than the healer. So it's important to realize it's not the bread that's saving you, it's God that's saving you. So if you could save that bread for multiple days, you would begin to trust in your bread and not God. And so that's why God gives us daily bread. So the work of healing comes daily. It's a daily process. You wake up and you do the hard work of accountability, of repentance, of calling out, bad family practices and the masks that you're wearing and eliminating waste and filth as it continues to pop up in your life, right? This is a process you're going to be on, and just take it one day at a time. And as you do that, know that it's not the process that's saving you. The process is merely the means by which we become more in alignment with God and who He is. And that work is only capable and possible through the Holy Spirit. So we want to trust not in the process of healing, but in the healer. We don't want to trust in the objects of healing. We want to trust in the healer. And so how can we not get too discouraged by the lengthy process of change? What are ways that we can kind of steel ourselves for the long journey we're on and not to relapse, say, in 6 years? Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves about that. All right, and then hopefully you guys had a great discussion there. I'm just going to give you guys your homework, and I'm going to send you out. Make sure you have a good prayer night, prayer time today. But this week was a little intense. We discussed the process of change will be it will require sorrow. It will require fear and pain. It'll take a long time. That's just a wonderful sentence, isn't it? This week, spend time journaling your fears of change and the comforts of staying where you're at, and then circle back around to those comforts and write out how those comforts are lies designed to enslave you. We are setting our foot on the long process of journey, on a long journey on this process of healing. And next week, we're going to talk about endurance for the change. And I think it'll be a really good topic of conversation. God bless you guys so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And you all take care. God bless.